Okay. Oh. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Business BoardCast. I'm Nikki Larkin. I'm here with my colleague Nigel Elks. Good afternoon, Nigel.
Hi Nikki, hi everyone, nice to see you.
So, Nigel works at the Business Board. He is, his day job, he's selling lots and lots of businesses. So, he really understands what our buyers are looking for when they're purchasing businesses. So, today, what we're talking about is what type of, sorry, I've got why there, what type of management team should you have for your plans? So we're going to be talking about timing, about the cost, the management, all sorts of things we're going to be talking about today. Nigel's run numerous businesses over his, I know you won't believe it, but he's had over 30 years of experience in business. So he's run lots and lots of different businesses. But now his focus is all about finding the right buyers for his business, the businesses that are looking to sell and exit. So we're going to start off, Nigel, with so if a company is thinking about a business sale, what time should they be thinking about getting a management team in who can take on responsibility for the business? Because that's always what people always go on about. Make sure you have a management team in place. So what time? When is the right time?
Okay, again, thanks for the invite today, Nikki, and that's a good question to kick off with, and quite a detailed one. So, um, I think always, whenever you're running your business and even considering a business sale, basically you want to run it as though you're not actually selling it. You just run it to the best of your ability, maximize the efficiencies, maximize the profits. Um, really, because also when you're in a business sale, that's the starting point of any valuation. Um, it obviously, as a business evolves, it needs a management structure in place at various points, that we then all realise as business owners. But personally, and this is where I disagree with others, I wouldn't shoehorn a management team in for a business sale. I'd let the business evolve, and everybody sort of says, right, it's one of the main criteria. If you listed the top 10 things you need to do when you're selling your business, people say, right, get in the management team. Now, that's the one thing, and we'll come to it later in this session, but that's the one thing I would challenge. Whereas others, again, that we'll come to, I totally accept, because they would help run your business, and that they'd sort of help in the efficiencies of the company. So the answer to your question, Nikki, is I would put it in as the business needed it, and not shoehorn a management team in.
So it's very important to be thinking about the timing, right time. It's not a default position that you have to get one in for a sale, or it's thinking about if it is the right thing in the right time.
Yeah, as the business demands. Yeah,
As
as
to
you need it. And as a business owner, you'll realize that as your workload increases, and if it's in a certain area, then you need assistance within that certain area, which is how your management team do develop. And equally, if it's internal, they grow with the ethos and values of the business, which I think is equally as important.
Of course. So, when we were promoting today's session, um, you put a bit of a provocative comment in the comment, Nigel, saying about that you disagree with most brokers on this point. So can you elaborate? What do you actually mean? What's your beef?
I think my beef is, or not my beef, but because I've ran businesses and I've been on the receiving end of brokers and people trying to sell my businesses, and then I've bought other businesses. You sort of there's certain points and criteria that I think are very, very sensible in running the businesses, you know, which again will help efficiencies, help profits, and help you run on a day-to-day basis, you know, such as processes you put in place, procedures, systems, having transparency of figures, all those good things. There's certain things in background, maybe accreditations and all the governance that you should be doing for health and safety, all good stuff that needs to be done. But again, when they say about a management team, I've been on meetings in since being a business broker and selling businesses, whereby I've been with others and they sort of said, yeah, no, what you need is a management team in here, and then it'll be a lot easier to sell and everything. But I think the risk to the business owner of replacing, which is what it entails, is basically replacing themselves with another person while they, as I say, work on the business. And it's fine, it's good to be strategic and everything, but I think as the business owner, up to a certain size, you should always be that leader, you should always be that face of the business. You are the driver. You've got it running through your DNA. To then sort of recruit somebody to come in to replace you, even on a gradual basis, is quite a challenge. So we can come back to it, and I'll say why as well, because basically it's if you look at the buyers, which we can come to again later in the session. But what I'd say is, so many business brokers say, yeah, you need a management team in place. Of course, you need a management team, but you don't need to replace you. I think you should be driving it really close to sort of completion and spend your time the other side trying to recruit on the for a replacement for yourself once it's in somebody else's ownership and once you've maximized the profits.
Okay, really good points, and we've had a question come in, which I will come to in a moment. Just a reminder, please do say hi if you're watching us live on
Hi.
YouTube
Oh,
or on
not me.
LinkedIn. You can too, Nigel. Just please do pop down your questions or comments in the box, and we will try. We will, as always, fit in whatever questions that we can. But I think. And what we've been really working on, isn't it, Nigel, is that the sale of an SME is very different to more of a medium-sized business. And that's where these things are going wrong, isn't it? Because the advice, the generic advice out there is often for the larger businesses. So that sort of fits in with, we're focusing more on, the sort of SMEs, the businesses, from 1 to 10 million sort of size. So you don't necessarily have the budget to have top-notch full service management team in there, because there's just not the budget. And so do you think that's part, I know sort of we didn't go through this beforehand, but do you think that's part of the issue, is a lot of the advice from brokers and corporate and finance that are generally written for the larger businesses, and that's why they're always saying about, have the full management team in place rather than for SMEs?
No, I think it's a very good point, Nikki, and absolutely right. And we can probably break it down into various sections. And as you rightly said, we'd work really with companies up to probably about 10 million, some over 10 million, depending on what the sector is. But certainly, as they get to a sort of a larger, maybe a million plus EBITDA or profit in basic terms, you then start to go into the sort of private equity interest arena. So they are the sort of guys that would expect a management team to be in place, and they would want the business to run in isolation with the team in place and everything there. But with and it really depends who the buyers are. So if you're going to private equity and that's a sale, or it's somebody that isn't related and is an outside investor, so they're not related within the trade.
Yeah, they might not be embedded in the sector already.
That's right. So they would really want a management team in place, but probably maybe the majority of the people we deal with would be more sort of trade sales or related within a sector. So somebody wanting to diversify into an area. And if we think about those sort of buyers, they would generally have some sort of expertise within their company that may be looking to sort of do the next step up and maybe run a subsidiary, which this subsidiary could be. So I think just going back a couple of stages, for anybody selling their business, if they then go to the trouble of getting a management team in situ, getting it working, sometimes it's quite a risk, and it's quite expensive, as we mentioned earlier. So it would be better for the actual buyer to put in somebody, and then the owner doing a transition point with the new recruit, so to speak, from the purchasing company, and then they take over and also do it under their ownership. So equally, the risk is on the other side as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the approach for maybe somebody who is sub a million, or there's still investors who would want a management team maybe to the 500,000 EBITDA level, but generally for sub probably £5 million turnover companies, I'd probably say you don't need to replace yourself or the main business shareholders. That could be done in time, but it is buyer dependent.
Indeed. And so what we're essentially saying is if you're recruiting for a management team, make sure it is for the benefit of the business, not necessarily because you're thinking about it from a sales perspective. So we've got a good
Absolutely.
question coming here from our friend Nick. So thank you, Nick, for your question. And as I say, please do feel free, anyone else on YouTube or LinkedIn, to pop in a question. Nick asks, does having the right management team in place increase the value of a business?
Well, that's a great question, Nick, and we've touched on bits of of it, and I think the direct answer for the question is yes, it does. If it's the right management team in place and it basically ring fences that business as to sort of working on its own, yes, it would, of course, increase the value, because it's not dependent on any of the outgoing shareholders. But yes, and there's a lot more of a deeper answer to it, and again, it depends on the buyers and everything. But yeah, good question.
Absolutely. So essentially, yes, if you've got the right people, yes, it can. But also conversely, if you've got people in there and therefore it's reducing down your EBITDA, and that benefit of those people isn't seen by the team, they aren't creating value themselves, that's actually costing you money, because if you are in a sale of a multiple of your EBITDA, so it can go either way.
Very, very good point. And I
Yeah,
think it is the cost of the team, but I think it's probably based on the size of the business, as well, that has to be um, sort of financially efficient enough to be able to finance the right management team. And what I probably would add as well is, as a business owner, when you're recruiting your management team and putting it together, that again can be a challenge, and really hopefully it evolves over time with good people coming through the organization who understand the ethos and the values of your business, which is, again, keeps everything together.
Excellent. So, I think we've touched on this before, but let's make it really succinct and obvious for our viewers. When you're selling your business, what are the buyers actually looking for in the management team?
I think it depends on the different buyers that are out there and the different size of the business, and probably the first thing to say is what's a buyer looking for in a business. So if it's somebody within the same trade, for example, they may not actually need all the management team in situ. They may have financial and HR expertise within the sort of the buying company. If it's an investor sale, private equity, somebody from sort of outside the trade, then they would look for to have those positions covered, and basically the company, working under its own steam, so to speak. So I think, depending on the buyer, if they're trade within it, they probably don't need the management team. They need people holding relationships. They maybe need a number of the areas covered to sort of produce what they actually sort of do there, or the services that they offer. But they may not need the top table management team. And so again, that's why I don't think people should rush out and sort of say, right, and if they come to market and they've maybe got an ex, or they're accountants like yourself, you're doing the management accounts for loads and loads of companies, that's fine, and that's good. And so also, they may carry on with that, or they may have their own finance director, but it also gives the buyer a little bit of flexibility. And I think, going back to what we said at the beginning of the session, is that the focus has to be not solely profit, but that's probably the first benchmark that people would look at as a valuation, unless there's massive sort of technology products, or intellectual property of some description or something like that, that means it's not all based on the profit, it's based on the sort of the rich IP within the company, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So we've got another question come in. God, Nick's thinking lots of questions today. He's asking, so in which case, how do you go about finding the right people?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think one for our recruitment friends, really, and all the profiling.
Indeed.
So
If that lovely Mike's out there, please do answer that for us.
that's true.
But I mean, I would say, from I obviously in my accountancy business, I've got a management team, and obviously we look after a lot of different companies. I would say you've got to have people that are able to work together. So you've got to have the right people that will fit into the culture of your business. So you've got to look for the right culture fit. You've got to have the right complementary skills of what you're actually needing and what's going to be most beneficial to your business. But also, you're looking at, are they going to really buy into the future of the business? So, what are they commercial? Because it's amazing how many managers are not necessarily very commercial. So are they, do they understand and understand your plan, and how much they're going to help you get there. And that's, as we know, it's very difficult to ascertain that. Hence why often people only uh, i- why people often hire people that they already know, which is sad, but that's often why, because it's a big expense to incur. But there are different ways. So yeah, you need to talk to your clever, savvy recruiters and consultants about how to get the right people in for your team, and they will have lots and lots of ideas. Lots and lots of
I think
ideas.
I think also on that point, it's somebody that understands the level of business you are. So if you are a smaller business, say you're sub 10 million, sometimes somebody who's just had corporate exposure, whilst they may bring in good practices, probably hasn't had the same sort of issues, or it hasn't had the same sort of level of experience. And sometimes it can work. In fairness, you've worked in big corporates, Nikki, and you've ran your own business for years, so you'd know both. But there's a lot of people, certainly when I was in business, that we used to sort of get approached by different coaches and such like, and where they come from quite a sort of high level corporate environment, the SME sector is so different, and you don't just want the theoretical of how something's done. You actually want somebody to roll their sleeves up a little bit and help you with some of it, because the jobs need doing, and it's a team effort. And so it's somebody getting into, like you say, the culture of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when the owner manages finances are online, it's a very different perspective, as opposed to some very, rich corporates. However, there are different corporates. I've been very lucky that I've worked in a lot of American ones, which do have generally a more entrepreneurial spirit, and people are encouraged to have their own profit centers, etc. So they do their remuneration is on the line for how well their little mini businesses within the corporate does. So it's, there are some good transitions from corporate to SME. It's looking for the right ones, and understanding why. So as I said, just do feel free, any comments anyone to, or questions that anyone has. But yes, let's. There's a couple things more that I want to go through, Nigel. So let's go into our final section first before we round it off. What's the one piece of advice that you would give to listeners about a management team?
I think, as we said at the beginning, I think as your business evolves and the business requires different positions to be covered, I think do that. I think it's so. I'm just going to say a little bit first, but what I would do for businesses is the more professional you are, the more transparent and efficient your systems are and everything. And sometimes even with a small company, but if you've got a sort of a big, think like a sort of a bigger company and have all the sort of disciplines in place, but you may be small, and sometimes within your sort of organizational chart you may have yourself down as a couple of areas. So you might be finance director and your managing director, or sales director and managing director, however it works. But you've got the structure. Everybody has their sort of roles and responsibilities and their accountability. But I think the one piece of advice I would say is have that team in place, recruit and run your business as you would do to sort of the best of your ability, but don't replace yourself.
Mm,
And everybody sort of says, "Oh, you've got to take yourself out of the business and look on the business." You can do that, but as part of the organizational chart, so to speak, you can be doing the analysis and looking down on the business, but still be that leader within the business. Your drive has got the business to where it is now and the level it is. And if then you're looking to sell, you want to maximize that situation. So don't hand it over to somebody else to do. Just carry on driving until you've got the sale across the line, and then do the transition the other side as to what that might be when you sort of do work for a year or two in the business, but keep on driving. So that'd be my advice: is have the team in place, but don't replace yourself. Keep in the driving seat.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we have one more question from Nick, and then I just wanted to see what the marketplace is like at the moment. So Nick's got another question. He does say it's his last question. He promises. So we'll see if he keeps that. What size of business would need to consider a management team? I mean, I know that you were talking about from an EBITDA perspective, but perhaps we should be thinking about number perspective of team size perhaps as well.
I think so, and again, maybe it's sort of one for our HR friends, but I generally look at, as you've sort of grown a business, you don't want too many reports. So and generally, I always used to
I always
work on a
say try
team.
not to have more than 5 or 6
I
to
say
each person
6.
is what
Yeah,
the
yeah,
structure I always try to go to.
exactly right. So 6, and then there's either a team leader or there's a manager there, and then that's how it's done. So obviously, if you've got a production department of 18, then there'd normally be 3 team leaders looking after those, sorting out the work, and managing each team. So I think it would be, and again, sector dependent. I'd sort of work at about, certainly when I was running the businesses, where there was sort of about 30 or 35, those sort of numbers, I was fine, but I was probably just at the level of needing some more of a structured management team. We'd still have managers, but I think once you get over that 30, 35 mark and then start to go to 50 employees and 60 and plus, then it really needs to be structured. And you want more than, you don't want to be then the managing director and the finance director, or you don't want to be looking after the sales and MD. You need people in those roles at those sort of levels. As I say, it is sector dependent though. So I would
Indeed,
say
indeed.
30 to 35.
Yeah, indeed. So thank that we've covered lots there, and it's refreshing to have a different perspective from the usual. Yes, you must have a management team. Make yourself redundant. So it's nice
Yeah.
to see the reasons why that might not necessarily be relevant for a team. But it'd be interesting for all those out there, all the business owners that are considering whether to start working on their exit. What's the market like at the moment, Nigel?
It's quite good. It's quite good. There's a lot of people through the COVID years. I know we're still going through them to some extent, but they've their businesses have changed slightly, so they're maybe looking to sort of replenish some of the sales in certain areas that have been have sort of reduced within the pandemic. There's others, say, within the professions where professional indemnity insurance and such like has gone up so much that it sort of, for some smaller practices, it sort of forces their hand a little bit to then say, well, it may be better to be under a bigger organization. So that's a fairly active market. And within the private equity guys, there's people with funds who, their instruction is to sort of spend money and invest it. So there are people with money there for obviously the right opportunities. And if a business is good or it's in the right sector, and sometimes it doesn't have to be good, it can be covering the issues that are within a sector like professional indemnity, or maybe a sector's been hit hard and just needs to then move into a bigger organization. So there's all those sort of things going on. So it's a lot more active than the Brexit years, I would say.
Yes, a lot of opportunity there if you do want to exit. Excellent. Really, really good to know. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nigel. It's lovely to
Pleasure,
have
pleasure.
you here again. And we'll be coming back, I think, the last Friday of March as well, with another succession planning aspect. But for those of you tuning in next week, apologies that last week we missed because of I had no electricity. Unfortunately, to storm Eunice, I keep saying Eustace, but I mean Eunice. She got rid of power all day. I was a whole day without any power, which was a very strange experience. So apologies for anyone that was looking forward to the corporation planning session. I will be running it though next Friday, so that's what you're looking forward to next Friday. So for anyone that's got a March year end, perfect time to be thinking about what things can you quickly do to reduce your corporation tax bill for your March 22 year, or even if it's your March 22, sorry, your June 22, you've got loads of time. So thank you so much again, Nigel. Have a lovely
Pleasure.
weekend. Hope you've got some nice plans.
And you, Nikki.
And cheerio, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Cheers. Thank you.